The sky burned red over New York City. General Claire Morrison stood on the roof of the bunker, watching ships larger than aircraft carriers float through the clouds. They had appeared 3 days ago, without warning, without communication. Just destruction. The aliens called themselves the Crithian Empire. They had sent one message to Earth before the attack began: surrender or die. World leaders tried to negotiate. They tried to understand what the aliens wanted. The answer came in the form of plasma beams that turned London into glass and melted Beijing into slag. Claire watched the news feeds until they went dark, one by one. Moscow, Paris, Tokyo, Delhi, every major city fell within hours. Earth's military fought back with everything they had: fighter jets, missiles, even nuclear weapons. Nothing worked. The alien ships had shields that made human weapons useless. It was like throwing rocks at a tank. She remembered the president's last transmission before Washington went silent. His voice shook as he gave the order. All military forces were to scatter and survive. Find a way to fight back. Find a way to win. Then the feed cut to static. Now Claire commanded what remained of the North American Defense Forces from a hidden base deep in the Colorado Mountains. The complex had been built during the Cold War, designed to survive nuclear war. It worked just as well for alien invasion. 6,000 soldiers, pilots, and civilians lived in the underground maze. They were alive, but trapped. Jake Harper walked up behind her. The colonel was younger than Claire, barely 40, but he had more combat experience than anyone else in the bunker. Special Forces, 3 tours in the Middle East, expert in guerrilla warfare. He became her right hand the moment the invasion started. "General, we need to get you inside," Jake said. "Those ships have been scanning the area all morning." Claire nodded and followed him down the metal stairs. The bunker smelled like recycled air and fear. People moved through the corridors with purpose, but their eyes were hollow. They had all lost someone. Family, friends, entire cities of people they would never see again. In the command center, screens showed what little information they could gather. Amy Rodriguez sat at the main console, coordinating with other hidden bases around the world. The commander had been an Air Force intelligence officer before the invasion. Now she kept track of every surviving human settlement she could find. "We have confirmation of 57 active resistance cells across North America," Amy reported. "Another 112 worldwide. Most are small groups, 20 to 50 people, a few larger ones in remote areas like us." "What about the aliens?" Claire asked. "What are they doing?" Amy pulled up satellite images. The few satellites still working showed alien structures growing like metal flowers across the planet. Mining operations, processing facilities, massive ships landing and taking off loaded with Earth's resources. "They're taking everything," Amy said. "Water, minerals, metals. They're draining the oceans. They've set up collection points at every major river. Best we can tell, they plan to strip the planet and leave." Claire felt anger burn in her chest. The aliens didn't want to rule Earth. They wanted to hollow it out and throw away the shell. Humanity was just an inconvenience to be removed. Ben Wallace entered the room carrying a data pad. The intelligence director never slept anymore. His job was to figure out how the aliens worked, what they wanted, how to hurt them. He had dark circles under his eyes, but a spark of excitement on his face. "General, we caught one," Ben said. Everyone in the room turned to stare at him. "A raiding party hit an alien convoy 6 hours ago in Utah," Ben explained. "Ryan Carter's team. They took out 2 transport vehicles and captured an alien officer. They're bringing it here now." Claire felt hope for the first time in weeks. How long until they arrive? 4 hours. They're taking back roads, avoiding patrols. Those 4 hours felt like days. Claire spent the time reviewing everything they knew about the aliens. The Crithians looked like 7-foot-tall insects with 4 arms and dark purple armor. They moved in groups of 5. They communicated through clicking sounds and hand signals. Their weapons fired superheated plasma that could melt through steel. Their ships were fast and heavily armed, but humans had learned a few things. The aliens were arrogant. They didn't post guards on supply convoys. They didn't expect resistance. They treated Earth like a conquered world, not a battlefield. That was their mistake. Ryan Carter arrived with his team at midnight. The young lieutenant had been a Marine before the invasion, specialized in hit-and-run tactics. His face was covered in dirt and his armor had burn marks, but he smiled as his team dragged the alien prisoner into the base. The Crithian officer was injured, one of its 4 arms hanging useless. It clicked and hissed at them in a language no one understood. They locked it in a secure room and brought in every linguist they had. It took 3 days to establish basic communication. The alien's name was Zartok. It was a logistics officer responsible for coordinating supply shipments. When it finally understood that humans wanted information, not just to kill it, Zartok started talking. The truth it revealed changed everything. The Crithian Empire controlled over 200 star systems. They had conquered dozens of species. They ruled through overwhelming force and terror, but their military was spread thin across the galaxy. Earth was supposed to be easy. A primitive world with simple weapons and no space travel. The invasion force was small by Crithian standards, just enough to crush human resistance and establish control. They never expected humans to fight back this hard. They never expected the cities to be so difficult to hold. The Empire had assigned minimal garrison forces because Earth was categorized as a low-risk occupation. Claire stood in the observation room watching Zartok through the glass. Ben stood beside her, scrolling through data they had extracted from the alien's personal computer device. "General, this is incredible," Ben said. "We have star charts, military protocols, locations of other Crithian colonies, communications frequencies, everything." "Can we use their technology?" Claire asked. "Lisa Grant thinks so. She says their computer systems are actually less advanced than ours in some ways. Different, but not better. We can crack them, maybe even hack their ships." Claire made a decision that would change human history. They weren't going to hide and survive. They weren't going to wait for rescue or hope the aliens would leave. They were going to fight back. They were going to take the war to the enemy. She called a meeting of all senior officers. In the briefing room, she laid out the plan. They would learn everything they could from their prisoner. They would study alien technology. They would coordinate with every resistance cell on Earth. And when they were ready, they would strike back with everything they had. Jake looked worried. "General, even if we take back Earth, they'll just send more ships. We can't win a long war." Claire smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Then we don't give them time for a long war. We hit them fast and we hit them hard. We take their ships. We learn their technology. And then we take the fight to them. They invaded Earth. They want a war. We'll give them one they'll never forget." The room was silent for a moment. Then Amy started clapping. Others joined in. The sound filled the bunker, the sound of hope, the sound of humanity refusing to die quietly. The invasion of Earth had ended. The invasion of the Crithian Empire was about to begin. 6 months passed like a lifetime. The resistance grew from scattered survivors into something that looked like an army. Claire Morrison coordinated operations from the Colorado bunker, while Jake Harper trained fighters in the desert. Amy Rodriguez connected hidden bases through a network of old cables and stolen alien communications equipment. Every day, humans learned more about their enemy. Dr. Lisa Grant worked 18 hours a day in the laboratory levels. The scientist had lost her husband and 2 children in the first week of the invasion. She channeled her grief into understanding alien technology. Her team took apart every piece of Crithian equipment they could capture. Weapons, computers, armor, ship components. They learned how each piece worked and how to make it better. The aliens use plasma containment fields for their weapons, Lisa explained to Claire during one briefing. We can replicate it with modified electromagnets. Their shields work on a rotating frequency. If we can predict the pattern, we can punch through. The Resistance began hitting alien convoys with more success. Ryan Carter's raiders struck supply lines every week. They captured weapons, vehicles, and more prisoners. Each mission taught them something new. The aliens were predictable. They followed the same routes, kept the same schedules, used the same tactics. They never adapted because they never thought they needed to. Colonel Harper called it enemy arrogance. They think we're beaten. They think we're just pests. That's going to kill them. In month 4, the Resistance achieved its first major victory. A coordinated attack on an alien supply depot in Nevada destroyed 6 transport ships and killed over 300 Krithian soldiers. More importantly, they captured 3 intact spacecraft and dozens of computer cores filled with data. Lisa's team worked day and night to crack the alien computer systems. What they found was better than anyone hoped. The Krithians kept detailed records of everything: supply chains, troop movements, communications with their home worlds. The data painted a picture of an empire stretched to its breaking point. Ben Wallace assembled the intelligence into a report that made Claire's heart race. The Krithian Empire controlled massive territory, but their military was barely holding it together. They had enemies on multiple fronts, rebellions on conquered worlds, border conflicts with rival powers. The force occupying Earth was tiny compared to what the Empire could deploy, but they couldn't spare more ships without weakening their other holdings. They're vulnerable, Ben said, more vulnerable than they want anyone to know. Earth was supposed to be an easy win to boost morale and resources. Instead, we're becoming a problem they can't ignore. Claire saw the opportunity. If they could drive the aliens off Earth completely, the Empire would face a choice: send a massive fleet to reconquer the planet, weakening their other fronts, or abandon Earth and look weak to every species they ruled. Either option served human purposes. She authorized Operation Hammer Strike. Every resistance cell on Earth would attack simultaneously. They would hit every alien installation, every garrison, every ship on the ground. Humans had been preparing for this for months. They had alien weapons. They had captured vehicles. They had thousands of angry fighters ready to take back their world. The attack began at dawn on a Tuesday. From Claire's command center in Colorado to resistance cells in Australia, Africa, Europe, and Asia, humans struck as one. Years of military coordination and decades of communications technology came together in a symphony of violence. Jake Harper led the ground assault on the alien command center in Denver. 200 fighters armed with captured plasma rifles stormed the facility. The aliens never expected an attack so bold. They were used to small raids, hit-and-run attacks, not a full-scale assault. The human forces overwhelmed them through sheer ferocity. In orbit above Earth, the real battle was happening. Greg Sullivan had been a test pilot before the invasion. Now he commanded the USS Freedom, one of the captured alien cruisers that Lisa's team had retrofitted with human controls. Alongside the Freedom flew the Vengeance and the Retribution, 2 more captured ships crewed by human pilots. The 3 ships attacked the alien orbital command stations with everything they had. Sullivan's voice crackled over the radio as his ship fired modified plasma cannons. "This is for New York. This is for every city you burned." The alien ships in orbit tried to respond, but human pilots proved better in combat. The Krithians flew in predictable patterns by the book, following doctrine. Human pilots did things no sane military would teach. They flew too fast, turned too sharp, took risks that made no tactical sense. But it worked. One by one, the orbital stations fell. Escape pods scattered like seeds as aliens abandoned their posts. Some tried to reach the surface. Others fled into deep space. The humans let them run. They wanted the aliens to go home and tell stories about Earth, about the species that refused to die. On the ground, resistance cells captured city after city. The aliens fought hard in some places, retreated in others. They hadn't prepared for a unified human counterattack. Their occupation forces were designed to control a broken, defeated population, not to fight a renewed military campaign. By the end of the week, Earth was free. Alien forces were destroyed, captured, or scattered. Humans controlled the skies again. People emerged from hiding, blinking in the sunlight, hardly believing the nightmare was over. But Claire knew better. She stood in the ruins of Denver, watching prisoners being taken away, and felt no relief. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. Amy Rodriguez joined her, datapad in hand. We have reports coming in from across the planet. 93% of alien forces eliminated or captured. We control all major population centers. The few remaining aliens are isolated in remote areas. And in space? Claire asked. Sullivan's fleet destroyed the orbital command network. A few alien ships escaped. They'll reach Crithian space in about 3 weeks. 3 weeks until the Empire knew Earth had thrown off its chains. Then what? Would they send a fleet to crush humanity permanently? Would they negotiate? Would they just leave Earth alone and focus on their other problems? Claire couldn't take that risk. She called a meeting of all senior commanders. They gathered in the temporary headquarters set up in the Denver ruins. Jake, Amy, Ben, Lisa, Greg Sullivan, who had landed his ship to join them. These were the people who had led humanity through its darkest hours. We have a decision to make, Claire said. We can rebuild and prepare for the aliens to come back, or we can take the fight to them. Jake frowned. General, we just got our planet back. Our people need time to recover. We need to rebuild. The Empire won't give us time, Claire said. They'll come back with overwhelming force, or worse, they'll just bombard us from orbit. Turn Earth into a dead rock and leave. We can't let them have the initiative. Lisa spoke up. We have 47 functional ships now. Mix of captured alien vessels and ones my team retrofitted. We have alien weapons. We have their star charts. We know where their colonies are. You want to invade them? Amy said. We're talking about taking on an empire that controls hundreds of worlds. No, Claire said. We're going to do exactly what they did to us. We're going to hit them fast, hit them hard, and keep them off balance. We're not going to conquer. We're going to destroy their ability to threaten Earth. Ben pulled up a star map. Their closest colony is Krithia Prime. Mining world, lightly defended. They use it as a supply hub for this sector. If we hit it, we hurt them, and show the galaxy that humanity isn't backing down. Greg Sullivan studied the map. My pilots can do it. We've trained on the alien ships. We know how they handle, and we're angry enough to fly through hell. Jake finally nodded. If we're doing this, we do it right. Hit them hard, send a message, and get out. No occupation, no holding territory. Just damage and fear. Claire looked at each of them. These people had survived the invasion. They had fought back when the world said it was hopeless. They had saved humanity. Now she was asking them to risk everything again. The Crithians came to Earth expecting an easy conquest, Claire said. They burned our cities and killed our people. They thought we would roll over and die. They were wrong. Now we're going to show the whole galaxy what happens when you attack humanity. The room was silent. Then Jake stood and saluted. When do we leave? 2 weeks, Claire said. Get our people ready. Get our ships ready. The Crithians invaded Earth. Now we invade them. The die was cast. Humanity was going to war. The human fleet left Earth orbit on a cold morning in March. 47 ships. A mix of captured Crithian vessels and human-built warships that Lisa Grant's team had designed. They weren't pretty. Some had mismatched armor panels. Others had human weapons bolted onto alien hulls. But they flew, they fought, and they were crewed by people who had nothing left to lose. General Claire Morrison watched from the command center as the ships accelerated toward the stars. Greg Sullivan commanded the fleet from the USS Freedom. Amy Rodriguez sailed as his second in command. Jake Harper led the Marine contingent, 2,000 soldiers ready to fight on alien ground. They carried enough supplies for 6 months and enough anger to burn for years. The journey to Krithia Prime took 9 days. Human navigators used alien star charts and faster-than-light drives that still seemed like magic. The ships traveled through something Lisa called subspace, folding distance like paper. What would have taken generations with human technology took just over a week. On day 8, Sullivan called a final briefing. Ship captains gathered in the Freedom's meeting room through video links. Kyle Bennett commanded the Reaper, a lean Krithian destroyer that his crew had painted with shark teeth. Sarah Blake captained the Defiance, a heavy cruiser bristling with weapons. Each ship had a story. Each crew had lost people to the invasion. "We hit them at dawn their time," Sullivan explained. 3 targets: the orbital defense station, the ground military base, and the processing facility. We take them out fast, broadcast our message, and jump out before reinforcements arrive. "What about civilians?" Sarah asked. "Intel says there are about 50,000 Krithians on the planet." "We're not targeting civilians," Sullivan said firmly. "Military and industrial targets only. We're not them. We're better than that." Jake Harper spoke up from his position with the Marines. "My people will secure the military base. We take prisoners if they surrender. If they don't, we do what we have to do." The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Krithia Prime system. Sensors showed a yellow star with 6 planets. The 3rd planet was their target. Green and blue from orbit, Earth-like enough that humans could breathe the air. The Krithians had been mining it for 200 years. Sullivan gave the order and the fleet accelerated toward the planet. They would know soon if this worked. If human weapons could really challenge the Krithian Empire, if 47 ships crewed by survivors could defeat a military that conquered worlds. The orbital defense station detected them first. Alarms blared across Krithian command centers. The station commander sent a warning message. "Unknown ships, identify yourselves." Sullivan responded by firing every weapon the Freedom had. The battle lasted 11 minutes. Human ships tore through the orbital defenses like wolves through sheep. The Krithians had never faced an enemy this aggressive. They tried to form defensive formations, but human pilots were already among them, firing at point-blank range. The defense station exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the planet below. Kyle Bennett's Reaper led the assault on the ground base. His ship dropped through the atmosphere, trailing fire, weapons blazing. Marine drop pods fell like rain, each carrying 20 fighters in power armor. They hit the ground running, taking the aliens completely by surprise. The Krithian base was designed to process resources and manage mining operations. It had minimal military presence, a few hundred soldiers who had never seen real combat. They fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outfought. Human Marines moved through the base with brutal efficiency, clearing buildings and securing equipment. Jake Harper stood in the command center of the Krithian base, watching prisoners being taken. The alien soldiers looked shocked. Some were wounded. All of them were terrified. They had heard stories about the humans on Earth, how they refused to die, how they fought with insane ferocity. Now they knew the stories were true. Sarah Blake's Defiance destroyed the main processing facility from orbit. Precision strikes took out refineries and storage tanks without damaging the residential areas. Huge explosions lit up the ground as years of stored resources went up in flames. The Krithians would get no more supplies from this world for a long time. The entire attack took less than 3 hours. When it was over, the Krithian military presence on the planet was destroyed. The orbital station was debris. The ground base was captured. The processing facility was burning. and standing in the middle of the main base, Jake Harper set up a broadcasting station. The message went out on every Crithian frequency, video and audio, sent to every ship and colony in range. It showed Jake standing in front of a captured Crithian flag. Behind him, human Marines stood guard over alien prisoners. "This is Colonel Jake Harper of Earth Defense Forces," he said. "6 months ago, the Crithian Empire invaded our world. You burned our cities. You killed our people. You thought we would surrender or die. You were wrong." The camera panned across the burning base, the destroyed equipment, the captured soldiers. "This is Crithia Prime. It was a Crithian military and industrial center. It's not anymore. This is what happens when you attack humanity. This is what happens when you underestimate us. We're not asking for peace. We're not asking for negotiation. This is a promise. Every world you hold through force, we will liberate. Every species you've enslaved, we will free. You invaded Earth. Now, we're invading you." The message ended with coordinates of the attack and a simple signature. Earth remembers. Sullivan ordered the fleet to jump out. They had been in system for 3 hours and 17 minutes. Crithian reinforcements would arrive soon. The human fleet vanished back into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind destruction and fear. News of the attack spread through the Crithian Empire like wildfire. A human fleet had struck deep into Imperial territory. They had destroyed a major facility and escaped without losses. The empire that had ruled through fear now tasted it themselves. But humanity wasn't done. Over the next 6 months, the Earth Defense Fleet struck 12 more Crithian colonies. Each attack was different. Some were hit-and-run raids on supply depots. Others were full assaults on military bases. The pattern was unpredictable except for one thing. Every attack hurt the Crithians, and every attack left the same message. Earth remembers. Sarah Blake became famous for her tactics. She would broadcast messages to the enslaved populations on Crithian worlds before attacking, telling them to take shelter, to prepare for freedom. When human ships destroyed the military garrison, the slaves often rose up. Rebellions broke out on world after world. Kyle Bennett specialized in pure destruction. His Reaper would appear, destroy everything military, and vanish before the Crithians could respond. He hit supply convoys, communication relays, and orbital construction yards. The Crithian war machine started to slow as critical supplies stopped flowing. The Empire tried to respond. They sent battle fleets to hunt the humans. But Sullivan's ships were faster and smarter. They never stayed in one place. They used guerrilla tactics in space, hitting targets the Crithians didn't expect and running before superior forces could arrive. More importantly, other species took notice. Races that had suffered under Crithian rule saw that the Empire could be hurt. Rebellions that had been crushed before flared up again. The Crithians found themselves fighting on dozens of fronts, their military stretched even thinner. Sarah Blake took on a new role. She became humanity's diplomat to the oppressed. She met with rebel leaders, species that had been enslaved for generations. She offered them weapons, training, and hope. In return, they joined the fight against their oppressors. The Free Worlds Coalition formed slowly at first. A few species here, a rebellion there. But it grew. Soon there were 20 different species coordinating their attacks on Crithian targets. The empire that had ruled through strength found that strength failing. Claire Morrison watched the reports from Earth with satisfaction. The plan was working. Humanity didn't need to conquer the empire. They just needed to break it. Every successful attack inspired more resistance. Every freed slave became a fighter against the Crithians. The empire was collapsing from within, but she knew the Crithians would eventually respond. They couldn't let this continue. Their subject worlds were rebelling. Their military was struggling. Their economy was suffering. They would have to do something decisive. The summons arrived 6 months after the first attack on Crithia Prime. The Galactic Assembly, a council of the major powers, called an emergency session. The subject, the human problem. The Crithian Empire demanded action against Earth. They wanted sanctions, military intervention, anything to stop the human rampage. Claire knew this moment would come. She prepared carefully. Amy Rodriguez compiled evidence of Crithian war crimes. Ben Wallace gathered intelligence on the Empire's history. Lisa Grant prepared technical data on alien weapons and tactics. But most importantly, Claire prepared herself. She would face the Galactic Assembly. She would stand before species that had existed for thousands of years, and she would make them understand that humanity would not be pushed around. Not anymore, not ever again. She chose her delegation carefully. Jake Harper would come as military representative, Amy Rodriguez as intelligence chief, Greg Sullivan as fleet commander, and Dan Foster, a former ambassador who had survived the invasion, would handle the diplomatic protocols. The team departed for Unity Point Station. It was time to face the galaxy and make humanity's position clear. They invaded Earth. Now Earth would invade them, and nothing would stop that until the Crithians paid for what they had done. Unity Point Station floated in neutral space between the territories of the major galactic powers. It was enormous, a city in space built over 1,000 years by 23 different civilizations. Millions of beings lived and worked there. Diplomats, traders, families. It was a place where wars were prevented and peace was maintained. General Claire Morrison's ship, the Freedom, docked at the military port. She wore a formal uniform that had been made specifically for this occasion, dark blue with silver stars, the uniform of Earth Defense Forces. Behind her walked Jake Harper, Amy Rodriguez, Greg Sullivan, and Ambassador Dan Foster. They were the first humans to officially enter galactic politics. The station authorities were not welcoming. A Vraxian security officer, tall and covered in blue scales, checked their credentials with obvious disgust. "You are granted temporary diplomatic status. Keep your weapons secured. Do not start any conflicts. The assembly meets in 6 hours. Dan Foster nodded politely. He had been a UN ambassador before the invasion, trained in diplomacy and protocol. "We understand. We're here to talk, not fight." The Vraxian made a sound like grinding metal. Laughter, maybe, or contempt. "The Crithians say you only know fighting, that you're savages who attack without provocation." Claire met his eyes. "The Crithians burned our cities and killed billions of our people. Then they were surprised when we fought back. If that makes us savages, so be it." They were escorted to a diplomatic quarter. The rooms were designed for oxygen-breathing species, which was fortunate. The air was breathable, the gravity close to Earth, normal. Claire stood at the window, looking out at the vast station and the ships docked around it. Hundreds of different designs, hundreds of different species. Humanity was late to this party. Jake found her an hour before the assembly. "General, we've been getting looks. Other species. Some seem curious. Others look like they want us dead." "The Crithians have been spreading their version of events," Claire said. "We're the aggressors. We're the dangerous ones. We're the problem that needs to be solved. Are we going to convince them otherwise?" Claire smiled. "We're going to tell them the truth. What they do with it is up to them." The assembly hall was breathtaking. A circular chamber with seats arranged in tiers, each section marked for a different civilization. At the center was a speaking platform where representatives could address the council. Holographic displays floated everywhere, translating speeches into hundreds of languages. Claire and her delegation were given seats at the back. New species, no voting rights yet. They were there to be judged, not to judge. 23 civilizations filled the chamber. Some looked almost human. Others were so alien that Claire couldn't figure out which end was the head. All of them were more advanced than Earth. All of them had been traveling the stars while humanity was still banging rocks together. The Crithian delegation sat in a position of honor near the front. Supreme Commander Vorthak led them, a massive Crithian in black armor covered in metals. He looked exactly like the aliens who had invaded Earth. The same insect-like features, the same 4 arms, the same arrogant bearing. The assembly chair called the session to order. She was a luminari, a species that looked like living light contained in a vaguely humanoid shape. Her voice was soft, but carried through the chamber. We gathered to address the actions of the species called humans. The Crithian Empire has brought formal complaints. Supreme Commander Vorthok, you may present your case. Vorthok rose. He spoke in clicking sounds that the translation system rendered into English. The humans are a dangerous species. They attack without warning. They destroy civilian infrastructure. They encourage rebellion among peaceful populations. They have killed thousands of Crithian citizens and caused massive economic damage. He showed footage of destroyed Crithian facilities, burning buildings, wounded soldiers. He made it look like unprovoked terrorism. The humans claim we invaded their world first. This is a lie. We offered them the opportunity to join the Empire peacefully. They responded with violence. When we moved to secure their planet for their own safety, they attacked our forces. Now they rampage across our territory, destroying everything they encounter. They have allied with criminal elements and rebels. They arm terrorists and encourage chaos. The humans are not a civilization. They are a plague that must be contained before they spread. Other species murmured. Some seemed convinced. Others looked uncertain. Vorthok continued for 2 hours, painting humans as violent savages who threatened galactic peace. When he finished, multiple species spoke in support. The Vraxians, who were allied with the Crithians. The Keltor Dominion, who feared any new species that could fight. The Consensus, a hive mind that valued order above all else. Each one added to the narrative. Humans were dangerous. Humans were unpredictable. Humans needed to be stopped before they destabilized the entire sector. Through it all, Claire sat silently. Jake wanted to shout. Amy wanted to show their evidence. Greg looked ready to fight the whole assembly, but Claire just watched and waited. Let them talk. Let them show their bias. Let them build their case as high as they wanted. Finally, the assembly chair turned to the human delegation. General Morrison, you have requested time to respond. The floor is yours. Claire stood and walked to the center platform. She was smaller than most species there, weaker looking. One human woman against the accumulated power of the galaxy. But she had survived the invasion. She had led the resistance. She had taken the fight to the enemy. She was not afraid. Thank you, Chair, Claire said. Her voice was calm, almost quiet. The translation systems carried her words to every seat. I want to start by showing you something. Amy activated the holographic displays. Footage appeared. Earth before the invasion. Cities full of life. People going about their day. Children playing. A peaceful world. Then the Crithian ships arrived. The footage showed the attack in brutal detail. Plasma beams melting buildings. People running in terror. Entire cities burning. The footage came from surviving satellites, security cameras, personal devices. It showed the truth. This is New York City, Claire said. 8 million people lived there. The Crithians destroyed it in 4 hours. No warning, no communication, just death. More footage. London, Moscow, Beijing, Tokyo, city after city burning. The Crithians had thought they destroyed all the evidence. But humans saved everything. Even in death, the satellites recorded. The Crithians say they offered us peace. They're lying. This is their first message to Earth. Claire played the recording. The Crithian surrender demand. Join the Empire or die. No negotiation, no diplomacy, just an ultimatum. We tried to surrender, Claire said. Our leaders contacted them, begged them to stop, asked what they wanted. The Crithians responded by targeting our capitals, by murdering our leaders, by bombing our cities until they were dust. The assembly was silent. The footage spoke for itself. This was not a police action. This was not a peaceful annexation. This was genocide. Claire showed more evidence. Crithian mining operations draining Earth's oceans. Processing plants turning human cities into raw materials. Plans to strip the planet and move on. Humanity wasn't being conquered. It was being exterminated. 3 billion people died in the first month, Claire said. 3 billion! Men, women, children, civilians who never held a weapon. People who just wanted to live their lives. The Crithians killed them because they were in the way. She showed footage of the resistance. Humans fighting back with captured weapons. The liberation of Earth. The joy of people emerging from hiding. We didn't start this war. The Crithians did. They invaded our world. They murdered our people. They tried to erase us. And yes, we fought back. We fought back with everything we had. We took their ships. We learned their technology. We became strong enough to hurt them. Claire turned to face Vorthak directly. You thought we would die quietly. You thought we would surrender or be exterminated. You were wrong. We survived. We adapted. We became dangerous because you made us dangerous. She turned back to the assembly. The Crithians call us savages. They call us violent. They're right. We are violent. We've been violent to them. But ask yourselves why. Ask yourselves what you would do if someone invaded your home, killed your family, destroyed your world. Amy brought up new information. Data they had taken from captured Crithian computers. The Crithian Empire has conquered 47 species in the last 1,000 years. 12 of those species were completely exterminated. The rest are slaves, working in mines and factories, with no rights and no hope. The data showed colony after colony, oppressed populations, brutal occupation forces. The Crithian Empire wasn't a government. It was a machine that consumed worlds and threw away the people living on them. We're not the first species they've attacked, Claire said. We're just the first one that fought back hard enough to hurt them. Every world you see here is living under Crithian occupation. Every population is enslaved or dead. That's the empire you're protecting. She paused, letting that sink in. The Crithians say we encourage rebellion. Yes, we do. We arm oppressed species. We help them fight for freedom. We support anyone trying to escape Crithian rule. Is that wrong? Is fighting for freedom a crime? More footage showed the Free Worlds Coalition. Species that had been enslaved for generations, now free and fighting. The joy on their faces, the hope in their eyes. Claire showed attacks where human ships destroyed military targets while specifically avoiding civilian areas. The care they took, the rules they followed. We're not saints, Claire admitted. We've killed Crithian soldiers. We've destroyed their facilities. We've hurt their empire. But we've never targeted civilians. We've never tried to exterminate a species. We've never enslaved anyone. Everything we've done in war. A war the Crithians started. She pulled up one final image. Earth from orbit, showing the scars of the invasion. Cities still in ruins. Oceans partially drained. A wounded world. This is my home, Claire said quietly. This is what they did to us. And they did it because they could. Because we were weak. Because we couldn't fight back. Well, we're not weak anymore. We can fight back. And we will never, ever let anyone do this to us again. The assembly chamber was dead silent. Every species stared at the evidence. At the truth that the Crithians tried to hide. Claire took a breath. This was the moment. Everything depended on what she said next. You invaded Earth, she said, her voice rising. You murdered billions. You tried to erase humanity from existence. Now we will invade you. We will free every slave. We will liberate every oppressed world. We will break your empire into pieces. This is not a threat. This is a promise. The chamber erupted. The assembly hall exploded into chaos. Some species jumped to their feet, shouting. Others activated translation devices, talking rapidly to their delegations. The holographic displays flickered as multiple species tried to speak at once. The assembly chair's light form pulsed brightly, trying to restore order. Supreme Commander Vorthak stood and pointed one of his 4 arms at Claire. "This is exactly what I warned you about. The humans are mad. They openly threaten war against the Crithian Empire. They must be stopped now before they destroy everything." A Keltor representative stood. His species looked like walking crystals, light refracting through their bodies. "The humans admit to aggression. They admit to attacks on sovereign territory. They should be sanctioned immediately." But other voices rose in response. A small being from the Talari species, barely 3 feet tall with fur and large eyes, stood on her chair to be seen. "The evidence shows the Crithians committed genocide. The humans defended themselves. How is that wrong?" a Vraxian delegate hissed. "Defense is one thing. What the humans are doing now is revenge. They attack colonies. They arm rebels. They destabilize an entire region of space." Claire remained standing on the central platform. She watched the chaos with satisfaction. Good. Let them argue. Let them see that this wasn't simple. The Crithians wanted the assembly to condemn humanity quickly and quietly. Instead, the truth was forcing them to actually think about what happened. Ambassador Dan Foster moved through the crowd, speaking quietly with different delegations. This was his element. He knew how to read a room, how to find allies, how to plant seeds of doubt. Jake, Amy, and Greg stayed near Claire, ready to protect her if the debate turned physical. The assembly chair finally restored order. Her light pulsed in a commanding pattern, and the translation systems amplified her voice. "Enough! We will have order. This assembly will not descend into chaos." A new voice spoke. The Archon representative, a species that looked like floating jellyfish made of energy. They were one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy, respected by all. "I wish to speak." The chamber went quiet. When the Archon spoke, people listened. "I have reviewed the evidence presented by both sides," the Archon said. Its voice was musical, like bells. "The facts are clear. The Crithian Empire invaded Earth without provocation. They attempted to exterminate the human population. The humans fought back and won. Now they pursue their attackers. None of this is complicated." Vorthak tried to interrupt, but the Archon continued. "What is complicated is the question of what happens next. The humans have made their position clear. They will continue attacking Crithian territory until they feel justice is served. The Crithians want this assembly to stop them. But I ask all of you, what would your species do in the same situation?" That question hung in the air. Every species in the chamber had to imagine their world burning, their people dying, their civilization nearly destroyed. What would they do? Would they forgive? Would they stop? A consensus drone spoke in the flat, emotionless tone of the hive mind. "The humans destabilize the sector. They encourage rebellion. They threaten the established order. This cannot be permitted regardless of their reasons." "The established order is slavery," Claire said. She hadn't been given permission to speak again, but no one stopped her. "The Crithian Empire rules through fear and violence. They've conquered dozens of species. They enslave entire populations. You all know this. You've known it for hundreds of years. And you've done nothing." "That is not your concern," a Vraxian delegate said. "Internal affairs of the Empire are not your business." "They made it my business when they invaded my world," Claire shot back. "When they killed my people. When they tried to erase humanity. You want me to just accept that? To let them continue enslaving others because it's convenient for you?" Another species stood. The Talon Confederation, a democratic alliance of several worlds. Their representative was humanoid, close enough that Claire could read expressions. The representative looked troubled. "The human has a point. We've allowed the Crithian Empire to act with impunity because challenging them would be costly, but that doesn't make it right. Challenging them would lead to war, the consensus said. War costs lives. War disrupts trade. War is inefficient. War is what the Crithians brought to Earth, Greg Sullivan said, speaking for the first time. War is what they'll keep bringing to other species unless someone stops them. Vorthak's voice rose above the others. Enough of this. The humans are criminals. They attack our worlds. They kill our citizens. This assembly must take action. Sanctions at minimum. Military intervention if necessary. The assembly chair looked at Claire. General Morrison, the Supreme Commander demands action. What is your response to this? Claire took a deep breath. This was the moment. Everything led to this. I have a counter-proposal. The Crithian Empire can surrender. The chamber went silent again. Vorthak's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter or rage. Surrender? To you? A species that just learned to leave its own planet? Yes, Claire said calmly. Surrender. Agree to our terms and the war ends. What terms? The assembly chair asked. Amy brought up a document on the holographic displays. Claire had written it herself, with input from her team. It was simple and clear. First, release all enslaved species immediately. Every world the Crithian Empire holds through force becomes independent. Second, pay reparations to Earth. You destroyed our world. You'll help rebuild it. Third, the Crithian military will be reduced by 75%. Fourth, you will submit to monitoring by this assembly to ensure you don't invade anyone else. The terms were brutal. They would effectively end the Crithian Empire as a power. Vorthak's body language showed pure fury. Never. We will never accept these terms. The Empire has existed for 3,000 years. We will not be dictated to by primitives. Then the war continues, Claire said. And you'll lose. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. Because every world you occupy is ready to rebel. Every species you enslaved is waiting for a chance to be free. We've shown them it's possible. We've given them hope. Your empire is already dying. You just don't know it yet. The Archon spoke again. The human is correct. We have received reports of rebellions across Crithian space. The Empire's control is weakening. The humans have catalyzed something that cannot be stopped. Vorthak turned to the assembly. Then help us. Send your fleets. Crush the humans and their rebel allies. Restore order. Isn't that what this assembly exists for? To maintain stability? At what cost? The Talari representative asked. How many more species should die so the Crithians can maintain their empire? How many worlds should remain enslaved for the sake of stability? The debate raged for hours. Some species supported the Crithians. Others supported humanity. Most were caught in the middle, unsure which side would benefit them more. Dan Foster worked the room tirelessly, building support, finding common ground, making deals. Finally, as the station's day cycle moved toward night, the assembly chair called for a vote, not on military intervention. That was off the table. Too many species opposed it. Instead, they would vote on recognition of humanity's grievances and support for independent negotiations between Earth and the Crithian Empire. It was a compromise that satisfied no one but allowed everyone to save face. The vote passed by a narrow margin. The assembly recognized that the Crithians had committed atrocities on Earth. They recognized humanity's right to seek justice, but they stopped short of endorsing the human war or condemning either side completely. After the vote, Claire stood outside the assembly hall with her team. Jake looked disappointed. That's it? After everything, they just tell us to negotiate? It's better than we hoped for, Dan said. They didn't condemn us. They didn't authorize intervention against us. They acknowledged our grievances. That's a win. It means we can keep fighting, Amy added. The Crithians wanted the galaxy to unite against us. Instead, we're seen as having legitimate reasons for our actions. Claire watched Vorthak leave the chamber, surrounded by his delegation. He caught her eye across the crowd. The hatred there was palpable. This wasn't over. The Crithians would keep fighting. They would send fleets to crush Earth and the Free Worlds Coalition, but they would face an enemy they didn't understand, an enemy that refused to quit, an enemy that had learned from the invasion and become stronger. The next day, before leaving Unity Point Station, Claire sent a final message to the Crithian High Command. It was broadcast across all their channels, sent to every Crithian world. This is General Claire Morrison of Earth Defense Forces. Your Supreme Commander demanded I surrender at the assembly. I refused. Now I make you a final offer. You have 6 months. 6 months to release your slaves, withdraw your occupation forces, and begin reparations. If you do this, the war ends. We rebuild. We move forward. She paused, her face hard. If you refuse, in 6 months the entire human fleet arrives at your home world, not to occupy, not to enslave, but to break your empire forever. Every rebel, every freed species, every enemy you've ever made will be right behind us. This is not a negotiation. This is a deadline. You invaded Earth expecting an easy victory. You thought we were weak. You thought we would die quietly. You were wrong about everything. You awakened something in humanity, something you can't defeat. We will never stop. We will never quit. We will never forgive. You have 6 months to decide if you want to survive. The message ended with the same signature that appeared after every human attack. Earth remembers. The human delegation returned to Earth to find a world transformed. In the months they had been gone, millions had worked to rebuild. The scars of the invasion were still there, but life was returning. Children played in streets that had been battlefields. Farms grew in fields that had been burned. Humanity was healing, but they were also preparing. Shipyards worked around the clock building new vessels. Training centers turned civilians into soldiers. Research facilities pushed alien technology to new limits. Earth was becoming a military power. The Free Worlds Coalition grew stronger. 20 species now coordinated their attacks on Crithian territory. Rebellions spread like fire. The empire that had seemed invincible 6 months ago was fracturing. Claire stood on the roof of the rebuilt command center in Colorado. She could see the mountains in the distance, beautiful and eternal. She thought about all the people who had died in the invasion, her friends, her family, billions she would never know. They deserved justice. They deserved to be remembered. Jake found her there as the sun set. Do you think the Crithians will surrender? Claire watched the stars begin to appear. Somewhere out there, the Crithian Empire was making a choice. Would they accept the terms and survive, or would they fight to the bitter end? No, Claire said. They're too proud, too arrogant. They'll fight. Then we go to war, a real war, their homeworld, their heartland. Yes, we finish what they started. A lot of humans will die. Claire nodded. I know, but a lot already have. And if we stop now, it was all for nothing. The Crithians need to learn that you can't just invade other species. You can't commit genocide and expect no consequences. Someone has to teach them that lesson. Even if it costs everything. Claire turned to look at Jake, this man who had fought beside her from the beginning, who had never quit, never faltered. They invaded Earth. They brought this on themselves. Now we finish it. 6 months later, the human fleet would arrive at the Crithian homeworld. 600 ships, human and allied species, carrying the fury of the oppressed. The largest military operation humanity had ever attempted. The battle that would decide whether the Crithian Empire survived or fell. But tonight, Claire stood under the stars and remembered. She remembered Earth before the invasion. She remembered the cities burning. She remembered the desperate fight for survival. And she remembered the promise she made to the dead. Earth remembers, and Earth never forgives. The war was not over. The hardest battles were still to come, but humanity would face them the same way they faced the invasion, together, unbroken, unstoppable. They had invaded Earth. Now Earth was invading them, and nothing in the galaxy would stop that until justice was done.